Hollywood has never been short on sex symbols, but not everyone who rises to that status truly understands the cost that comes with it. From bold emotional and romantic experiences with women to rumored connections with some of the most powerful and desirable men in the film industry, Charlize Theron's private life has long fueled public fascination. She once stated unapologetically, "Every part of my body gives me pleasure," a declaration that felt both liberating and defiant. Yet behind the image of a Hollywood sex bomb lies a far more complex reality, one shaped by pressure, judgment, and the darker consequences of being labeled a sexual icon. This is the untold story of Charlize Theron's emotional life and personal evolution. Born on August 7, 1975, in Cape Town, South Africa, Charlize grew up in a family that was not wealthy but deeply rooted in culture and history. Her father, Charles Theron, owned a construction company and descended from French Protestant Huguenots. Her mother, Gerda Theron, was a strong, decisive German woman who later endured profound tragedy following her husband's death. Charlize spent her childhood on the family farm near Johannesburg, in Benoni, a vast, isolated landscape that quietly shaped her resilience, independence, and the layered inner world she would carry into adulthood. Charlize grew up as an only child, her early years shaped by animals, open land, and the heavy stillness of long, sun-scorched days in the South African countryside. On the surface, it looked peaceful, almost idyllic. But beneath that calm exterior was a household burdened by constant tension. Her father was a severe alcoholic, and violence slowly became an inescapable part of daily life. Charlize came of age in a state of quiet dread, witnessing the explosive, unpredictable rages of a man she both loved deeply and feared intensely. At 13, her life took a decisive turn. She was sent away to boarding school and later enrolled at the National School of the Arts in Johannesburg, where her creative potential was first truly recognized. There, she immersed herself in ballet and acting, discovering an artistic world far removed from the isolation of her childhood farm. It was a glimpse of freedom and possibility, a new identity forming beyond survival. Yet even within this creative refuge, the shadows of her family life followed her. The most devastating moment came when Charlize was just 15 years old. On one fateful night, her father, drunk and enraged, shouted threats and vowed to kill both her and her mother. Faced with a life-or-death moment, her mother, Gerda, had no choice but to shoot in order to protect her daughter. Her father died that night, an event that abruptly ended Charlize's childhood and left a permanent mark on the woman she would become. Charlize witnessed the entire moment unfold. It was not only the death of her father, but the definitive end of a childhood shaped by fear and trauma. Yet from the ashes of that tragedy, she did not collapse. Instead, Charlize slowly rebuilt herself, emerging as someone stronger, more self-reliant, and deeply aware that her pain would always be part of her, not as a weakness, but as something she learned to carry with strength. Those dark early years did not break her spirit. They quietly forged her resilience, sharpened her character, and forced her to confront life with a rare sense of clarity. From this foundation, Charlize became a woman who does not shy away from truth, unafraid to embrace the most demanding and emotionally intense roles, because she had already encountered life at its most unforgiving from a very young age. Although she still saw herself as a ballet dancer at 16, Charlize's path shifted unexpectedly when she won a year-long modeling contract after a local competition in Salerno. She and her mother left South Africa for Milan, Italy, a world that felt foreign, cold, and irresistibly alluring. For the next year, Charlize worked as a model across Europe, moving through the glamorous spotlight of fashion while quietly longing for the stage where her true artistic ambitions lived. When her modeling contract came to an end, Charlize and her mother made a fearless decision to start over in the United States, a place where ambition and adversity exist side by side. In New York, Charlize enrolled at the prestigious Joffrey Ballet School, determined to fulfill her dream of becoming a professional dancer. But reality proved unforgiving. She lived in a friend's cramped, windowless basement, battling isolation, financial hardship, and mounting emotional strain as her dreams slowly slipped out of reach. Then came the blow that changed everything, a serious knee injury. In that instant, Charlize understood that her body would no longer allow her to dance. The loss of her lifelong dream plunged her into deep depression. When her mother flew in from South Africa, There were no comforting words or gentle reassurances. Instead, she offered a stark choice: move forward or go back home. Charlize chose to move forward. In 1994, she arrived in Los Angeles with nothing but a one-way ticket her mother had purchased and just $300 to her name. The early months in Hollywood were a relentless struggle for survival. She stayed in cheap boarding houses, anxiously waited for small checks sent from New York, and at times quietly took bread from restaurant baskets just to ease her hunger. Her lowest moment came one day at a bank, when she was denied access to her own money because she wasn't a U.S. citizen. Desperate and frustrated, Charlize argued and pleaded at the counter. That moment, humiliating and painful, became the turning point of her life. Standing behind her in line was John Crosby, a talent agent. He stepped in, helped her resolve the situation, and handed her his business card, unknowingly opening the door to an entirely new future. Crosby soon steered her toward acting classes, and from that point on, Hollywood began to notice the tall, willowy young woman with the unmistakable voice and an intensity that lingered in her stare. Her first real breakthrough came in 1995, when Charlize landed a role in the horror sequel Children of the Corn 3. A year later, her performance as Helga in 2 Days in the Valley pushed her into the public eye, drawing attention not only to her striking beauty but to a raw, restless energy that felt impossible to ignore. Yet that early recognition came with a hidden danger. Charlize was quickly boxed into a narrow image, repeatedly offered the same seductive roles, the same surface-level characters. She refused to be reduced to repetition. That decision made her path far more difficult, but she understood the truth clearly. Choosing comfort and familiarity would slowly end her career before it truly began. That act of resistance defined the Charlize Theron who would follow. She refused to bargain with destiny, refused to survive on appearance alone, and refused the easy way out. In the late 1990s, when Hollywood favored predictable female faces, a name once seen as just another rising star quietly stepped beyond her safe boundaries, moving closer to the dangerous edge between glamour and darkness. Charlize Theron. Without spectacle or shortcuts, each role she took during this period cut sharply into the audience's memory. The first major turning point arrived in 1997 with the psychological thriller The Devil's Advocate. In the film, Charlize was not merely a supporting presence behind a male lead. She portrayed the wife of an exceptionally successful lawyer, a woman slowly unraveling under the weight of isolation, paranoia, and psychological collapse. Acting alongside Keanu Reeves and standing directly opposite the commanding presence of Al Pacino, Charlize was placed in an intense, high-pressure environment. And it was precisely there that she revealed her power. Vulnerable, unsettling, and quietly devastating, her performance lingered long after the screen faded to black. The film's commercial success marked a shift in perception. Hollywood began to see Charlize Theron differently, no longer as a beautiful former model who drifted into acting, but as a serious actress willing to move beyond safety and into something far more daring. Shortly afterward, in 1998, Charlize Theron took on a leading role in the adventure film Mighty Joe Young, portraying the loyal companion and protector of a massive mountain gorilla. The project was ambitious, heavily financed, and designed for broad audiences. Yet despite its scale and expectations, the film underperformed at the box office. For many young actors, a failure of that size could have stalled, or even ended, a rising career. For Charlize, it became something else entirely, a strategic retreat before a greater advance. In 1999, she appeared in The Cider House Rules, a quietly powerful, deeply human story set in Maine during World War II. Her role, a young woman seeking an abortion in a judgmental, morally rigid society, demanded restraint rather than spectacle. It was subtle, restrained, and emotionally precise, requiring courage without grand gestures. The film earned both critical and commercial success, firmly establishing Charlize as one of Hollywood's most serious emerging actresses. That same year, her image seemed everywhere. In January 1999, Vanity Fair featured her on its cover under the headline "White Hot Venus," positioning her as Hollywood's newest beauty icon. But the glow of that recognition quickly gave way to controversy. Just months later, Playboy published photographs taken years earlier, when Charlize was still an unknown model. Released without her consent, The images sparked a public legal battle. Though she ultimately lost the case, the episode marked a sobering realization. Fame does not arrive alone, it exposes artists to the industry's most unforgiving shadows. As the early 2000s began, Charlize Theron appeared to enter a quieter phase. The explosive momentum slowed, but she never disappeared. Instead, she continued working steadily across a wide range of projects, including Reindeer Games, The Yards, The Legend of Bagger Vance, Men of Honor, Sweet November, The Curse of the Jade Scorpion, and Trapped. On the surface, it looked like a holding pattern. In reality, it was the calm before the most daring transformation of her career. Many of those films achieved only modest box office results, and some were even met with harsh criticism. But beneath the surface, this was not a period of confusion or decline. It was a formative chapter in which Charlize Theron was quietly refining her skills. She deliberately chose to work with directors she respected, embraced creative risks, and accepted failure as part of the process rather than something to fear. As she later acknowledged, this was the time when she believed in directors more than studios. The decisions she made did not always lead to immediate success, but they built something far more valuable: experience, endurance, and the emotional maturity required for the defining moment that lay ahead. Charlize Theron's journey during these years was not a smooth climb toward fame. It was uneven and demanding, marked by setbacks and small victories intertwined. This was a road where beauty often became a double-edged sword, and where a female actress had to fight relentlessly to be seen for her ability rather than her appearance. Yet it was precisely through these flawed, sometimes overlooked roles that Charlize prepared herself for the transformation that would later redefine her career. The moment she would shatter expectations and emerge as one of the most commanding forces in Hollywood. That transformation arrived in 2003, a year that stands as a defining chapter in Charlize Theron's acting life. She decisively shed the image of a Hollywood beauty and stepped into the ranks of the most fearless and powerful actresses of her generation. This was not merely a season of success, but a declaration, her deliberate claim to a place at the center of cinema, surrounded by acclaim, controversy, and roles that carried lasting significance. The transition began with The Italian Job, a sleek and entertaining heist film in which Theron played a composed, razor-sharp safe-cracking expert. The film became a global box office hit, reaffirming her A-list status and proving she could hold her own alongside Hollywood's biggest male stars. But that commercial triumph was only the surface. Later that same year, Charlize shocked audiences with Monster, a role that permanently altered how the industry viewed her. By transforming herself into serial killer Aileen Wuornos, Theron erased every trace of her iconic beauty and willingly stepped into the darkest corners of human experience, marking one of the boldest reinventions Hollywood had seen. This was no longer mere performance, it was a deliberate dismantling of image. Charlize Theron's historic Oscar win not only made her the first South African actress to claim the Best Actress award, but also propelled her into the highest-paid ranks of Hollywood, transforming her into a figure both widely admired and deeply respected. She had crossed a threshold where desire gave way to credibility, and fame was matched by authority. After the Oscar, Charlize resisted the temptation to retreat into safe, glamorous roles. Instead, she continued to choose demanding, sometimes uncomfortable paths. She delivered a haunting performance in The Life and Death of Peter Sellers, revealing her precision in inhabiting complex real-life figures. She also embraced unconventional spaces, appearing in Arrested Development and venturing into science fiction with Aeon Flux, fully aware that commercial success was never guaranteed. The artistic high point of this period arrived with North Country, where Theron portrayed a working-class woman who confronts sexual harassment in a brutal industrial environment. The role earned her another Academy Award nomination and further solidified her reputation as a cinematic voice for women often ignored or silenced. In the years that followed, she moved effortlessly between art-house films and large-scale blockbusters. From war investigation drama in the Valley of Elah, to raw family tragedy in The Burning Plain, and global box office impact with Hancock, her range seemed boundless. Beyond film, Theron's influence expanded. She received a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame, became a global fashion icon through Dior, and was appointed a United Nations Messenger of Peace. Together, these milestones shaped a Charlize Theron who was no longer just a star, but an artist willing to sacrifice comfort in pursuit of depth, and to triumph precisely because of that commitment. By 2009, her career entered a quieter yet unmistakably confident phase. Absent from red carpet spectacle and unburdened by overexposure, she demonstrated full control over her artistic direction. Rather than chase leading roles, Theron appeared briefly but memorably in The Road, a bleak post-apocalyptic film where her presence existed only through flashbacks. Despite the limited screen time, her portrayal of a fragile woman in a collapsing world lingered like a carefully placed emotional wound. That same year, she unexpectedly stepped into animation, lending her voice to Astro Boy. It was a surprising move into family-oriented fantasy, another quiet reminder that Charlize Theron was never interested in repetition, only in evolution. His move was never about commercial calculation. It was a clear signal that Charlize Theron was prepared to explore every form of expression, even when her face was absent from the screen. For her, acting had long ceased to be about physical presence. It was about emotion, voice, and meaning, no matter the medium. Beyond cinema, 2009 also linked her image to a powerful symbolic moment when she co-hosted the final draw ceremony for the 2010 FIFA World Cup in Cape Town, South Africa. On that global stage, Charlize stood not only as a Hollywood figure, but as a representative of her homeland. When she jokingly drew Ireland instead of France, a playful reference to Thierry Henry's infamous Hand of God incident, she revealed a side of herself that was sharp-witted, fearless, and unapologetically independent. The moment was light-hearted, yet it subtly asserted her refusal to be bound by rigid diplomatic expectations, broadcast to millions worldwide. After nearly 2 years away from the big screen, Charlize returned in 2011 with Young Adult, and it was anything but a cautious comeback. She portrayed a 37-year-old woman unraveling under alcoholism, depression, a failed marriage, and an obsessive attachment to the past. The character was deeply flawed, uncomfortable, and often difficult to sympathize with. As Queen Ravenna in Snow White and the Huntsman, Charlize Theron didn't merely compete with her younger co-stars, she eclipsed them. Her presence was so commanding that many critics later admitted Ravenna became the film's true center of gravity, the character audiences remembered most. That same year, her turn as Meredith Vickers in Prometheus reinforced a striking new persona, an icy, aristocratic force of power, cold, controlled, and intimidating in a way rarely granted to female characters in Hollywood at the time. Both films grossed nearly $400 million worldwide, firmly restoring Theron to the top tier of box office stars. From that point on, her career accelerated rather than slowed. In 2015, she delivered what many now consider one of the defining action performances of the 21st century as Imperator Furiosa in Mad Max, Fury Road. With minimal dialogue, Theron dominated the screen through sheer physical commitment, searing eye contact, and absolute command of her presence. Her performance helped elevate the film into a globally celebrated masterpiece and placed her among the very few female action stars whose cultural impact rivaled that of her male counterparts. Yet even at the height of blockbuster success, Theron never abandoned emotionally demanding material. In Tully, she exposed a rawer, more vulnerable side, portraying a drained, overwhelmed mother with brutal honesty. In Bombshell, she once again stunned audiences by transforming into Megyn Kelly, a role that earned her multiple major nominations, including an Academy Award nod. By this stage, Theron was no longer just an actress, but a formidable producer, actively shaping her narratives, choosing her projects, and controlling her own voice and image. Moving seamlessly between dominant villains, iconic action heroines, and politically charged dramas, Charlize Theron entered a dazzling phase where fame, influence, and financial power converged. Yet, paradoxically, it was at this very peak that her personal life, defined by complex relationships, controversial decisions, and quiet Hollywood scandals, began to draw a level of public fascination rivaling the spotlight she commanded on screen. Yet that discomfort became the source of the performance's power. Critics responded with overwhelming praise, from Richard Roeper to Roger Ebert, who described Theron as one of the finest actors working in cinema. It was clear she had not slowed down, she had recalibrated. Fewer roles, sharper choices, less visibility, greater impact. This was the phase in which Charlize Theron no longer needed to prove her stardom. Instead, she confirmed her place as a true acting artist, someone willing to step away, to wait, and to return only when the role could leave a lasting mark. That evolution set the stage for another decisive shift in 2012, when Theron embraced two major villain roles in back-to-back big-budget productions, signaling yet another fearless reinvention. Beneath the blinding lights of Hollywood, Charlize Theron has long been presented as the embodiment of power, sensuality, and liberated beauty. Yet behind the flawless red carpets and the enduring sex symbol label lies a far more layered private world, a romantic history shaped by intensity, heartbreak, public scrutiny, and deeply personal choices that often collided with fame itself. From an early age, Theron never masked her curiosity or openness towards sexuality. She spoke candidly about rejecting rigid conventions and acknowledged a willingness to explore beyond traditional boundaries, including relationships with women. Her now infamous statement, "Every part of my body gives me pleasure," ignited media frenzy. To the public, it sounded like provocation. To Charlize, it was something else entirely, a declaration of agency over her body, her desires, and her emotional truth. That same honesty elevated her into the highest ranks of Hollywood sex symbols, while simultaneously exposing her to the darker consequences of being sexualized. As one of the most desired women in the industry, Theron endured relentless speculation, invasive curiosity, and moral judgment, pressures rarely imposed on her male peers. Desire and criticism followed her in equal measure. Her first publicly known relationship was with actor Craig Bierko, spanning from 1995 to 1997, during the fragile early years of her Hollywood ascent. It unfolded quietly, almost unnoticed, like a prologue before her personal life became a recurring headline. Young, driven, and still finding her footing, Theron kept that chapter largely out of the spotlight. She later entered a 3-year relationship with Stephen Jenkins, lead singer of Third Eye Blind. Their romance ended in 2001, but its emotional impact lingered. Jenkins poured the aftermath into the album Out of the Vein, turning private heartbreak into public art. What might have remained a personal split instead became a subtle cultural moment, a movie star's love story transformed into raw musical confession. That same year, Charlize met Irish actor Stuart Townsend on the set of Trapped. The relationship would become her longest and most serious, lasting nearly a decade. They shared homes between Los Angeles and Ireland, often fueling rumors of marriage. To many, they appeared settled, anchored. Yet in late 2009, the relationship quietly came to an end, a reminder that even the most enduring bonds can dissolve beneath the weight of time, growth, and change. There were no weddings, no public vows, and no dramatic courtroom battles. For Charlize Theron, love never had to follow a traditional script, and endings did not need to be framed as failure. In 2013, however, her name was suddenly linked to Sean Penn, instantly igniting a media storm. It became the most controversial relationship of her private life, two powerful personalities, each carrying turbulent histories, surrounded by rumors of engagement, control, and emotional conflict. By June 2015, the relationship ended. Theron later rejected the sensational narratives, clarifying that there was no broken marriage, only two people who were no longer right for one another. As romantic chapters closed, Theron chose a different direction for her personal life: motherhood. Guided by a long-standing concern for orphan children, she adopted 2 daughters, one in 2012 and another in 2015. Motherhood was not a compromise or consolation, but a conscious choice, one that reflected independence rather than convention. In 2019, Theron once again found herself at the center of public debate when she shared that her child Jackson is a transgender girl. She stood unwavering in her belief that a child's identity is not something a parent decides. Her words were not framed as provocation, but as protection, a clear affirmation of love, autonomy, and the right to self-definition. Beyond love and family, Theron has also confronted the deeper wounds of her past. She revealed that she began therapy in her 30s to address long-held anger shaped by growing up in apartheid-era South Africa. That process of healing gave her greater self-awareness, and perhaps the clarity that allowed her to love more honestly, leave when necessary, and choose her life without apology. Charlize Theron's private story is not a timeline of scandals or headlines. It is the portrait of a woman who insists on living truthfully, who loves on her own terms, rejects marriage when it does not serve her, embraces motherhood in her own way, and refuses to surrender her identity to expectation. Thank you for watching. This story ends here, but many more await. See you in the next video.